Hey team, here's a quick video that I wanted to send you guys about just some worship techniques. This video is going to be based around acoustic guitar. So whether you've played for us before on acoustic guitar or you've just joined the team, I just wanted to give you a look at how I play acoustic guitar in worship at LCC and maybe how you could improve. I'm going to go through just a couple just generic topics, and I don't have a script for this. I'm just sharing from the heart here on things that I've realized I say often to acoustic guitar players, whether that's in a youth group or here on our Sunday morning stage, whatever that is. And so I'm just going to give you some of those things in video form, and we'll work through them. So the first thing I want to talk about is your instrument. This is something that comes up usually in my first conversation with someone that wants to join the team. But what kind of instrument should we bring? An acoustic guitar for a worship band should be something that a guitar that also has electronic components. So has a pickup. It probably requires a battery and some sort of electronic system control board that you've put in your guitar or that came with your guitar when you bought it. So that's kind of the first requirement. We don't mic acoustic guitars here externally. There's a lot of different ways that you can take a guitar that doesn't have electronic components and put electronics in it, but that can be sometimes more costly than just buying a new guitar with electronics. The second is quality, and this is something that I usually don't make a big deal about, but there is a certain standard of guitar that we need to bring in order for it to work in a mix and to sound good through a PA. It does not have to be a Martin or a Taylor. There are great brands out there, and a lot of times it's not the brand of the guitar as much as it is how well it's maintained, or if it's in good shape, or if it has fresh strings, and we'll talk about all that stuff. But it needs to be a guitar of a quality that is acceptable, and sometimes that's just a judgment call. So making sure we take care of our guitar and that we have something that's of high quality is the first thing for this video. So the second part is just some accessories that you have to have as a guitar player. The first is a strap. I've had guitar players show up with no strap. I always have a couple extra in my office, but don't try to play guitar by just holding it or resting it on your knee or sitting on a stool. We need a strap. We need to be able to hold the guitar and stand. The second is a pick, and this is going to be a little bit of a controversial topic throughout this video, but I really believe in using guitar picks. And so having a guitar pick or several guitar picks, because you'll probably lose them. I always go through these and lose these. I use a 0.7, 0.6 or 0.7 guitar pick. This is a nylon guitar pick with a grippy side to it, and so I can hold it better. There's a couple different solid guitar picks out there. You shouldn't be using anything bigger than one for acoustic guitar. It's just too heavy. And I guess it does come down to personal preference. And then if you go down to the really thin stuff, like the 0.38s and the 0.5s, you're going to feel that's a little too floppy for you to dig into the strings. And so this is a 0.7. I usually order these by the hundreds and keep some in my office if you get in a pinch, but bring your own guitar pick and you're going to need that. And the last thing is something that we usually provide for you, but that you should have at home, and that is a tuner. Now, there's a couple apps that you can get, but they're not great. It's using your phone's microphone, but you should always tune your guitar. And that's one of the basics that we'll talk about today, of just keeping your guitar in tune. And so we use a couple different pedals here. The first is the Strobo Stomp. This is my favorite guitar pedal, but it also has some quirks and can be difficult to use. But when it's working, it's my favorite one. It kind of spins and tells you whether you're sharp or flat. And then the simpler one that you'll use probably often here is the Pitch Black from Korg. I think these are about 80 or 90 bucks if you want to get one for yourself for at home. But a pedal tuner is super important. You should never play guitar without a tuner, because the tuner also gives us a mute pedal while you're on stage. So let's say you're like, oh, I really do just love the clip-on tuner. Well, you still need a way to mute that guitar while you're tuning with the clip-on tuner. So a guitar mute pedal, a tuner pedal is really important, and it's something that we'll probably provide for you, especially in this space. I know sometimes in youth group they're not there, but you should always have a pedal tuner, and you should tune often. So when should you tune is a good question. You should tune at the beginning of a rehearsal. Right when you get in, that guitar needs to be tuned. You should not just pick it up out of your case and start playing, even if you played the night before at home. And you should tune probably a couple times throughout the day if you're on the worship team. Let's say a Sunday morning and you're playing at 9 and 11. I tune often at the beginning of the rehearsal, probably sometimes in the middle of the rehearsal if I hear my guitar going out of tune. Definitely before the service. I'll even sometimes walk up here about 10 minutes before service as people are getting here, and I'll tune my guitar. And then between services, and any time other than that you feel like it needs to get tuned. You can't tune too much unless that becomes a distraction for worship. So tune your guitars often and be precise with it. Don't accept that's kind of close, tune it, because you will definitely hear the band will suffer because of a bad acoustic guitar tuning. So tune often. Also, I'm going to talk about another accessory that you should have, but that's a capo. And a capo comes in a lot of different forms. This one is from G7, but I don't love this capo. It's not my favorite one I've ever had. I prefer the Dunlop capos that kind of mount from the back of your guitar. They're about $20. You should buy one or two of those and have them around. They're kind of spring-loaded. But a capo is really important, and that kind of goes to my next topic, which will be about playing style. But I use a capo often, and I'm okay with that. There's some people that just are against capos. You should be a guitar player that can play in all 12 keys. That's great. That's a great goal. But for what we do and the style that we're going to play in, I believe in a capo. And so I really only play in 3 keys. I play in G, which many of you probably learned guitar in the key of G. I play in the key of C, and I'll play in the key of E, which is very open. And those 3 keys, I can play every key imaginable between fret 1 and 5. So I'll fret, I'll capo 5 and play in G, and that's, that's actually key of C. But there's a lot of different ways that we can get to different keys with a capo. So you got to have a capo. A high quality capo is a good one to have. So bring a capo. And I say that to say when you move a capo, it's going to affect the tuning. So at least when I move a capo in service, I try to check the tuning. And sometimes I won't, if I don't have time or there's a transition that I want to go fast, I'll just pray it's in tune. Something I've noticed, and this is different from guitar to guitar, if I was capo 3 and I'm going to move it to capo 5, it'll probably be pretty close in tune. The biggest difference that I notice is when you go from no capo to capo or capo to no capo, and you're going to an open strumming now, open tuning, no capo, and you had a capo on for the last 30 minutes, you're really going to notice that your guitar's out of tune. But usually when you just move a capo, you can survive by doing that. Next, I want to talk about strumming, and I'm going to spend actually a good portion of this video talking about strumming. Sometimes I'll get a question, maybe from someone who's not even on the worship team, but they play guitar, and they'll go, "Man, you were strumming so fast," or "What's your strumming pattern for that song?" or "How do you keep up strumming so much?" I think it's the most important thing that we do. I think it's probably more important than the chords we play. And I've even demonstrated for some of you how you can just play no chords, and if you strum the right way, you can almost fit the role of acoustic guitar player. But I need to give you a little bit of a background. The acoustic guitar has become more and more devalued in the worship space, in the contemporary Christian music space. Whereas 20 years ago, acoustic guitar fronted bands were very, very popular, and even in the mix of those old Stephen Curtis Chapman and Chris Tomlin, Matt Redman albums, you would hear acoustic guitar the entire time. Now you really have to squint and kind of listen hard for acoustic guitar in a modern mix. And so what that means is we have to find what our role is. I believe that it's still very, very important, if not the most important instrument on the stage. A little biased, but especially for leading the band. And I'm going to talk a lot about that. But I want to demystify strumming for you. And even if you're a seasoned guitar player, and this entire series video has been boring up to this point, I want to just show you what I do. I am always strumming in what I'll call, and these are music terms, but in an 8th note or a 16th note pattern. And that really has to do with the tempo. In a slower tempo, between 65 and 80, it's a 16th note. And anything really faster than that, 90 plus, it's an 8th note, but it doesn't really change what I'm doing. I am always moving my arm up and down in that 16th note pattern. The only decision that I have to make is when to drag it across the strings. So what I mean by that, and let me play a little example. I'm going to just strum 16th notes straight and hit the strings every time. I'm here in the key of A, so I'm in capo 2 playing in G, but key of A is the natural key. So my arm is always doing that. Now, I rarely play like that, where I'm hitting the string on the up and the down equally and consistently. Every strum pattern that I do is based on that motion. And I'm still going to make that motion even if I don't strum the strings. So if I wanted to go chang, 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 it would be like this. And you'll notice that when I don't strum, my arm still moves. And that's actually how you develop really good timing. Drummers do this all the time. It's not necessarily that they hit the drum on the right beat, but they actually lift the stick in perfect timing before they strike. And it's just like called a preparatory stroke. But in guitar, we should always be kind of subdividing that 16th note. And so the way you wouldn't want to strum that pattern that we just played would be like this. Which is the same pattern. It sounds the same, but when your arm stops moving, you now have to keep that rhythm in your brain somewhere and make sure that when you up strum, you're in the right spot. So the basic thing that I want us to understand is every rhythm, every strumming rhythm comes off of that 16th note sub pattern. Da, 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 da. And I'm just deciding, creatively when to strike the string. Now, the second pattern that we can base it off of is actually the same one, but with a slight variance, and that is a swung 16th or swung 8th note pattern. And so it's the same thing, except I'm going to make my upstrokes a little later. And so what happens is the downstroke is a little bit longer than the upstroke, and it sounds like this, and you'll understand what I'm saying here. But this is a swung 16th note. It's the same thing. My arm's still in that constant 16th note pattern, but I've added a swing to it. Now, I wouldn't ever play that rhythm either, but I play a lot of rhythms that are based on that pattern with my arm. Usually like a 6/8. Let's talk about Graves into Gardens, right? That would be the intro to Graves into Gardens, how I might play that. My arm never stopped moving. It always did the up and down in the swung 16th pattern, but I just chose creatively when to put those accents in. And then you hear that. You just hear those 3 downstrums at the end of the pattern, which repeats it, and that's what makes Graves into Gardens sounds like Graves into Gardens. So that's strumming, and I want to demystify that. Even what I just shared to some of you might sound confusing, but it really isn't. It's all based on a repeated 16th note pattern and then making the decision when to drag it across the string. And the real key there to precise rhythmic playing is to keep your arm moving, even if I wasn't going to strum. And this is going to be a little bit of an exaggerated example, but imagine I just want to hit the downbeat of each bar. Or let's say I want to hit 1 and 3, right? It might sound like this. And so when I do that, I'm keeping time with my arm, and I'm just striking down when I want to hit the strings. And that's going to assure me that my strumming is in time. And instead of just having to guess where that beat is, So really practice that consistent 16th note arm movement, and I think a lot of your strumming problems will go away. Now, I want to talk about strumming in the context of a band, and this is a lot of the times what I've told a lot of you to do, and that is to simplify. So maybe the straight 16th notes isn't the one we want, but a lot of times what I end up doing, especially in a full band context, is a consistent 8th note or quarter note down strum. What that just means is I'm going down on the strings and not dragging it back up. And you'll notice I just threw a little bit of an up strum in there. But the idea here is that we really have to lay out the rhythm for the band. This is something that has to be precise, it has to be heavy, it has to be clear. And this is why I think a pick is really important, is that it clearly defines the beat. It also can't be lazy, meaning it can't be kind of stylistically late to the beat, or it can't be a long strum. Sometimes we don't think about this, but how much time passes between your first string and your sixth string? Is it a lot? Or is it, those are much shorter periods of time where you're strumming all 6 strings, but the tempo did not change. So when I'm with a band, I have a shorter range of attack. I have a quicker speed of travel from my first string to my last string, and that's allowing that guitar to take its rhythmic place in the mix. And it's not about the beautiful strings or the beautiful guitar sounds. It's about precisely keeping tempo for the band. And I think that that's really important, especially if you're in a context where you're not playing with a click track. But we talk about this often. It's not the click track's job to keep the band in time. It's not the drummer's job to keep the band in time. It's not even the acoustic guitar player's job, but it is extremely important that we all internalize the subdivision of the music. And so I'm going to give you a song sample that we're going to cut into this video, but this is a sample from a song called Come and Behold Him from Upper Room. And here's a big mix, a big song, and when it gets to the end of the first chorus and jumps into verse 2, we're going to hear the acoustic guitar establish the rhythm. And the drummer's there, but if you listen closely to the drum beat, there's no cymbals, there's no hi-hat, there's no ride, and the acoustic guitar gets to kind of stand out here and set this very simple rhythm. And sometimes this is exactly what's missing from that second verse or that second chorus of a song. And so here's a song sample from Come and Behold Him. Listen closely to the acoustic guitar and how it relates to the drums.
I stand in awe, completely captivated. You have my heart, nothing hidden, nothing wasted. I'm
So we talked about strumming patterns. We've talked about, what's the basic underlying structure of our strumming pattern. Then I talked about simplify. A lot of times I'll admit I don't play very simply, but that comes from a lot of practice. It comes from a lot of just making creative, stylistic decisions. Sometimes, if I'm playing a really upbeat song, let's say I'm playing, one of the hardest songs actually on acoustic is a song called High Praise from Maverick City. And it might sound something like this. And I'm doing a very quick 16th note subdivision there, and I've learned what the undertone of that rhythm is. And that actually comes from listening to the music and listening to the drummer often and making sure that what you're doing works with what they're doing, especially if you have a second acoustic guitar player. That's where it can get really complicated if you're both trying to do something that you just made up at home. I have never looked at a technique book for guitar, and maybe I'm too late into this video to admit that, but I have never learned from looking at those little up and down carrots on a rhythm, on a piece of sheet music. And so some people really think, oh, you got to think down, up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, down, up, down, down. I've never thought that way. It comes from understanding that there's an underlying subdivision and then just really feeling the groove. And I know that's like a little ambiguous, but it's about really understanding what's the song need from the acoustic guitar. And a lot of times, don't be offended by this. If you're playing with me, I'll say you need to simplify. You have to simplify, because a lot of times what's happening there is not necessarily what you're playing is bad, but it doesn't match up with what I'm playing or what the drums are playing, or it's confusing the vocalist. And so simplifying, you could play high praise just like this. Come now, run, daughters and sons. It doesn't require that complicated groove. And so if I tell you to simplify, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're playing anything bad. So that's just, I wanted to give you that song sample. I wanted you to hear it can get complicated. We can get there, but especially as we play in smaller teams, as we play with other musicians, it's got to simplify to a strumming pattern that is clear for the band. A lot of times your role is to be that hi-hat or that click track of clarity for the band. And so that's why, again, I'm going to say this a few more times, I really believe in a pick, and I really believe in that precise strumming. And a lot of times I'll hear people say, I can play without a pick. I've played without a pick for a long time. And you can even grow out your fingernail, but it's going to prevent you from doing a lot of that up strumming, or even in your down strumming. What happens is you get a lot softer attack. Using your fingernails, kind of like using a silicone pick. It's going to really drag across those strings in a subtle way that doesn't give the band the clarity that it needs. And you might be a beautiful guitar player and play the most beautiful chords, but if it doesn't sound really clear, I made this example to a high school student where I was like, I want you to play this chorus just like this. And I had him just not even play the chord and realize, like, this is your instrument. This is what the band needs. And all of a sudden the whole band came together. The bass player wasn't late. The vocalist didn't drag. The piano player knew where to put the chord. And so our role can be that of one of clarity. And anything that we add that doesn't give clarity is going to usually need to just get pulled back. So I've rambled a lot about that. But I think it's so important that we understand what our role is. And it's different when we're all by ourselves. Like, you can take more liberty. You can do a lot more finger picking. And you can do strumming with your fingers. You can, but there's still so much to be gained when you're in a team and you provide that rhythmic clarity with the pick and a lot of precision for your fellow band members. Okay, now that we talked about strumming and we talked about using the pick, I want to let you on to one other thing that I think is really important, especially as you take a leadership role in a team. And I think that this could apply to anyone on the acoustic guitar. You don't even need to be a vocalist that day. You don't even need to be the team member. But I believe that the acoustic guitar player has a lot of authority and power to direct how loud or quietly the band plays. And there's different ways that we can do that. We can do that through signals, hand signals. We can plan it out really well in rehearsal. But one of the things that I love about playing with a pick and playing with that simple down strum is how much dynamic range that it gives us as a guitar player. So really practicing, once we've really, landed on we're playing really simple down strum patterns or very clear and clean rhythms that help and enhance the team's timing, we also have a huge role dynamically. And that comes from, just playing and exaggerating dynamics. Dynamics just meaning how loud or quiet. So if I wanted to, for instance, tell the team to build, I need to be able to have a long dynamic range. I mean, as quiet as you can play and as loud as you can play are both appropriate means to using dynamics, especially from acoustic guitar. I'm trying to think of an example for this, but you'll notice that I can almost subconsciously communicate with my drummer, with my bass player, with a vocalist next to me, what we're going to do with the song. And the way that you do that is not by just playing louder or, crescendoing at the right time. You have to do it early. And so this you'll hear this often, let's say in the second verse of a song. Let's think of like Living Hope. I'm trying to think of the lyrics, right? Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah. Praise the one who set me free. Like that build before that second chorus. I'm going to be the first one to do it. And that's going to tell the band, you need to build too. And there are always going to be a couple beats or measures behind me. So not only do you have to play dynamically, but you have to play dynamically, dramatically, and early. Like you have to be the anticipator of that dynamic change. And I say this even to the whole team. This would go for anyone. But if you think that the music needs to go from a 5 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10, you need to go from 3 to 11. And then when we get to that chorus, we kind of land back at what our normal volume would be. So it really is about exaggerating that range, like taking so much out of these strings every time you strum them so that you're playing precisely and with a purpose. And to that I'll say this, when you lead worship by yourself, because a lot of times with this instrument, that's something that you'd be doing, this unlocks so much. You can really be a whole band all by yourself when you play really dynamically. When you open up the complete dynamic range of the instrument through the use of a pick and just stylistic things like palm muting or open strumming or dragging the pick, right? I can get so much range out of, let's say, the bridge of What a Beautiful Name. You have no rival, you have no equal, now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is, what a powerful name it is. You have all of the power and all of the ability to play dynamically with or without a band. If you're with the band, you do it early and you give them the cue. If you're by yourself, don't be afraid to play with that range. So many times I'll hear a great worship leader, a great vocalist, a great guitar player go up there and do What a Beautiful Name at a 5 out of 10 from start to finish. So unleash the dynamic abilities of your playing. Practice playing really quiet. Practice with the palm mute. Practice opening up. And then you'll hear me do some crazy things like a crazy double strum or something when I'm really excited and into the music. So just know you have a lot at your fingertips, no pun intended. You have a lot of power to orchestrate a whole arrangement right from your acoustic guitar, to lead a band powerfully, dynamically, and to provide a rhythmic authority to the team. If our click track goes out, I know we're going to be okay, because I know my role there just becomes a hi-hat, I'm just going to get in my role. Let me give you a few examples of things that I see often that don't work. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but if you're like I was 10 years ago, if you're self-taught and you're just like picked up a techniques book, or you've just taught yourself guitar, you learn some chords online, a lot of times people come in with the ability to kind of get through a song, right? And there's not any clarity or rhythmic precision to their playing. They go back and forth from a swung 16th to a straight 16th. They, stop their strumming. They're trying to think. And then that's when people struggle. They're like, I don't know how to sing and play at the same time. Or how do you do that while you're playing guitar? And it's like, this has to become so mindless and so default to your playing that you are able to do other things, lead worship, sing, lead the band, whatever comes with it. I think that's all I really wanted to share. And I don't want this to seem lecture-y. I wanted to put this in video content because I feel like I say a lot of these things often. I think these things often for myself, and I want you to realize that that's part of the process. Part of the process is, I talked about the devaluing of the acoustic guitar. Part of this journey that I want to invite you into is to rediscover the value of the acoustic guitar. To not say, I don't really hear it in the mix, so it doesn't really matter what I play, or it doesn't matter how I play. I'm just up here to hold the acoustic guitar because that's what a worship team needs. No, we need to change and rediscover what the purpose of the acoustic guitar is. And that comes from all the things I've talked about, and then being up here. Maybe you're up here just to play acoustic guitar that day, or you're up here to sing, or you're in youth group and you're picking up the guitar for the first time. Think about how important your role is for the team, and what would happen if we took that away. A lot of the things that we talked about, that when they don't exist, a band will fall apart. You won't have very clear transitions. Your vocalist will feel very uneasy starting songs, like at the beginning. I often say when there's less instruments, that's when it's most important for you to be very clear. So you're thinking, oh, it's just me at the beginning, I can do whatever I want. No, if it's just you and you're trying to give that vocalist that cue for the intro of What a Beautiful Name, right? And they got to come out of nowhere and say, "You were the word." Your job in that intro is to go, and just lay that down so that they can come in when they want. And then you'll even hear me add things like the dynamic stuff we talked about. I can give a vocalist their cue with my clear strumming and my dynamics. And so, for instance, we'll take that intro to What a Beautiful Name. The song starts, "You were the word at the beginning." And I would go like this with the vocalist. I know I'm going to give it 2 bars. They might know it's going to be 2 bars, but I'm still going to play this for it. Right? I set them up. I gave them, there was something done from beat 1 to beat 8 of that 2 bars that made it so clear for their intro. I'm rambling now. I just want you to back to what I said, rediscover the value of acoustic guitar. Realize how important this instrument is in our mix. And this gives our sound guys actually a very important texture. And really, we have to think about it as texture and not as beautiful tone. It makes me sad that I have such a beautiful, expensive guitar because I don't think a lot of its tonal qualities end up in the final mix. But that's okay. What I need to rediscover is my value for the team is in a precise, rhythmic, clear acoustic guitar player. And so that's really what I want to share with you guys today. The quote that I want you to remember, which is why I saved it for the end, is this: play your acoustic guitar like a drummer. You should feel like you're more of a percussionist than you are a keyboard player or a chordal player. We obviously play chords, and playing the wrong chord is not great, but if you start to think of yourself as a drummer on the team, as a precise, rhythmic, lay it down type of guy or girl in the team, it's going to be really, really beneficial for the people around you and for your own growth in worship leading. And then you'll feel really comfortable leading by yourself or leading with just one other person. That can be really exposing when you just have you and a vocalist and you need to get through a whole set. I mean, you unlock the dynamic range of that instrument, play with a lot of clarity, play with a lot of precision, and become the whole band, the drummer, the bass player, the piano player, the guitar player, and you could fit all of those things into what you're doing here on the fretboard. So I hope this video is encouraging and not daunting. I don't even know how long I've been talking, but I hope that if you made it this far, you hear my heart, which is that I want our guitar players not to just mimic me, not to just emulate what I do, but to find what their role is and how they can add the things that I've talked about. There's going to be things I said, you're like, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. I challenge you to say, how can we unify ourselves so that if I'm not on acoustic one day, or if that person fills in your spot, that we have some consistency to how we play, that we can have that rhythmic authority in all of the contexts of worship leading here at LCC. this is our video for acoustic guitar techniques for LCC. I hope that I didn't say anything too confusing. Send me an email, daniel@lccreading.org, or text me if you have any questions or you want to argue about something I said. Anyways, love you guys, and that's that video.